Welcome to Get Serious. Today I wanted to go over how to deal with difficult buyers. A little bit different than sellers. Some of the same rules can apply here, and how to really kind of balance, your current state of your own business and how strong of a position that you're in with the current asset that you hold, and knowing how much you're going to allow yourself to be pushed in order to get a sale done versus deciding to walk away. There's a certain art to it. It's really the art of negotiation. But I wanted to go over some more tangible examples today, just for you to keep in mind for your own deals and how we are approaching one. So we're trying to finalize a contract to sell the roughly 50-acre parcel we have south of Dallas. I know I've talked about this one a lot before. It's a prized asset within our portfolio that we bought for roughly $400K, and we were getting offers really every week that we had it within our ownership. We were under contract for over 2 months already with the developer. They spent $50K on various engineering studies to try to do a development. Land ended up being too flat to where they were going to have to do hundreds of thousands of dollars of dirt work to try to improve the water drainage, and ultimately they decided to bail on the deal even when we were open to negotiation. I talk about this in more length in other episodes you can search. And then as soon as we put the property back on the market, we got another firm offer for the entire property for $750K. About a week after we put the property on market, so still was getting a ton of attention, even keeping in mind, maybe some difficulties if you're really trying to do a larger development on it. But the location and just the overall asset and utility asset access is still just premier. It's a really rare parcel. So the buyer who came to us actually had made an offer on one of the child parcels right off the bat when we first listed this property back in January, I want to say. And this time they wanted to make an offer on the total parcel. And so they came in at $15K per acre. We tried to get them up to $16.5K per acre, and also to reduce their closing timeline. I think they were asking for upwards of 60 days because they were going to do conventional financing, 250 down, 500K financed. And they also only wanted to put like $1,000 EMD down for a $750,000 property. So we pushed back on that. Hey, can we get them to 45 days total close, and 1% or 7,500 for the EMD, and also the 16.5K per acre to exit. They said, okay, the counter terms are fine except for the price. $750 is the absolute max. So we considered that, and ultimately, this property was getting a bit long in the tooth. There was more hair on it, even being too flat than we thought when we first bought it. Plus, being in an ETJ, makes it a little bit trickier for development, and doing some of the hookups for public water, I think was going to be a little bit more expensive. I'd have to go back through the notes, but either way, we still have like a free $50K worth of engineering reports from the previous buyer. Like that adds value as well too. And then just the general uncertainty still of the macro environment, or like, hey, 750, like we're still, once we split with our the profits with our land investor partner, we're each still going to walk away with like a net 150K, like still an outstanding return plus our principal back. Going to be feeling a lot more comfortable. So he said, okay, at that price is all right, so long as we can close now in 30 days. Let's see if we can push them there. They had agreed on that. So we were all set to go under contract. And then, over the last, 4 or 5 days, they've just been nitpicking. I don't think they're very sophisticated buyers. This is more of a buy and hold strategy. And they're also seemingly foreigners. I'm not sure US, but different ethnicity. And, not going to reveal that here, but there are certain stereotypes, and we're kind of joking within our company, of certain nationalities, cultures that are inherently more difficult to deal with when you're across the table from them. And that has certainly been the case here. So I'm sure everybody has their own stories about that. So just to share a little bit more on the background. And so they were then trying to push, hey, we need longer time to close, even though they had agreed, at that 30 days. They also were saying, hey, the total acreage is going to be short by like 0.05 acres out of 50 acres, because the survey goes out to the middle of the street to account for a utility easement, even though that's just standard practice for pretty much anything that is along a county road. And so we pushed back on that. Hey, you just have to understand how these things work. Call the surveyor if you need to. They had a couple other legal description questions that we were able to clarify. Plus, they also pushed the entire property is fenced, nice barbed wire fencing. But there was a neighbor to the southwest who was slightly encroaching a gravel driveway onto our property that we only uncovered post-survey. But we went and approached the neighbor and explained this to them, and they understood, hey, yeah, we're going to have to move this. No problem there. They're going to do that at their own expense. But, when the fencing and that driveway were built out, the fencing is slightly over the limits of the property. Our property, so it's not fully encompassing the total acreage. And so the buyers were like, hey, we want you to take care of this prior to us closing and do it at your expense. And we're like, no, we can take care of it, but that's going to have to be at the buyer's expense. To do this, we already accepted, you didn't work with us at all from a counter on a pricing side, and $15K per acre is absolute minimum that we would consider for this. It's just too prime of a property. So we pushed back on that. This is even before we got pre-approval from their lender too. So hey, you guys got to sort that out first anyway. And, we're answering these other questions, trying to be responsive. They didn't push back further on the fencing. They, were willing to accept that, talk to the surveyor to figure out that utility easement thing. And we did get pre-approval. Plus I got the contact information for the lender, especially for a big property like this, or at least purchase price, sales price. I want to talk to the lender directly, so got him on the phone, hey, do you have any history working with these buyers? This is still their first time they've worked with them, but the lender was like, hey, we have 90% of the financial underwriting done on these guys, just waiting for a couple bank statements. They seem like, there's not going to be any issue. Financially, seem well positioned based on tax records. In fact, we were working with these guys on another property that fell through over the past, 4 or 6 weeks. And they were well positioned for that as well. So, and I also asked hey, what, we want to do a 30-day close here. Any issue? And he's like, no, there's not going to be an issue. I think this one's pretty cut and dry, simple to get this one done. That covered the bases with the lender. And then, our broker was sending over other adjustments that they wanted on the contract. And this was starting to get really frustrating. It was okay, we nailed all these things down. You guys keep coming back for more stuff. And so then they were asking, okay, for any shortages of acreage on the title policy, they want us as the sellers to take care of that. And usually that's going to be a buyer's expense. But in this case, we had just gotten the survey done. We had no issue closing. We don't expect there to be any issue on this. And if there was, it's maybe a couple $100. So we gave on that. Then here, I'm pulling up a couple of these just because they're just so many nitpicks where it's that's obviously us as funders. We are extremely diligent about doing all of our duties, but you have to prep all your work beforehand. And if you keep going back to the well and just asking concession, you're going to really frustrate your counterparty and not be wanting to do business with these folks. So they're not really appreciating that. And again, they're getting a really killer deal on this property when we already had, tacit agreements and already had the back and forth. And, we had also, requested, 15 days of financial or due diligence feasibility. again, we already understand there's going to be no issue there. We have 50K worth of uh, engineering studies behind this, and essentially, yeah, just a buy and hold. That we have our own survey. Like there's going to be no issue at all. There's public water. I mean, there's nothing's going to come up here. And so, we were asking, okay, for 10% as an option fee of their EMD, so $750 if they bail on the deal. Again, it's Premier, they're going to lock it up, and they wanted it down to $100. Like, okay, fine, we'll give in for that as well. At most, it's going to lock us up for 2 weeks here. And then they kept pushing for, hey, our lender has said, hey, they need to put 60 days down. That's a lender requirement. So pushing back after we had already agreed on pricing and getting the total closing period down. And also, we have open phone, we record all conversations. Like, I just talked to your lender, the person directly underwriting your deal, and they said 30 days was going to be no issue. So it's like, hey, you guys are lying through your teeth to us here. This is not a good feeling. I think we can bring all parties together and clear that up, but like, hey, you're not going to pull a fast one on us when it comes to the lender requirements, because we just talked to them. Plus, our broker prepped a backup lender who also quoted they could do it in 30 days. So, you start to get a little bit of a bad feeling there. And then it's like, okay, can you guys even front the cash? The lender said you guys are well positioned, but, are you able to put that 250K down within that 30 days? Like, why are you asking for more and more time here? If you're going to get cold feet here, like, we're not going to do the deal. And then then they wanted an update for the financing contingency to change it to 30 days and to be the full closing timeline. Usually you can figure that out shortly. Again, the lender already has 90% of it done. So we had it, I think it's 15 days, maybe 21 days. And our broker really pushed back. They're like, no, I need 30. Okay, fine. We'll do that. We have the pre-approval. So then we thought, okay, we're going to be squared away. And then the following day, got additional pushback where they were saying, hey, if the title company for whatever reason has an issue with the survey being accepted, that's going to be at a seller's expense to get a whole nother one done. And we're like, no way. We already spent, I think, something like $5,000 on the initial survey. It was just done. We know it's solid. It was accepted by the previous buyers who do a ton of developments in the area, accepted by their title company when we first bought the property. And we also have the 50K worth of engineering studies with like additional survey work there. Like, there's no way we'd agree to possibly pay for another survey here. Like, this, it's not going to come up. But even if it did, like, you guys are going to have to front some of that. We're not paying considerable extra expense there. And they kept pushing more for, hey, we need at least 45 days close period. Even though, again, we have confirmation from the lender that they can do it shorter. So we gave on that, said, okay, well, we'll give you an extra 5 days, 35 days. We know it can be done. If we need to extend, if we already agreed, like, hey, if we really need to extend due to the lender, it's not going to be an issue there. And at most, you guys have stake, $100. We'd rather not get this locked up just to get $100 out of you guys. That's not going to service us. But it's been so annoying. And I told the broker who's just been ready to cuss these guys out for a few days now, having to deal directly. And I told our broker to, like, hey, if like, just tell them in no uncertain terms here, like, we have been giving so much during this back and forth here that if they don't agree to this survey stipulation and they try to push again on the closing date, like, we are walking. So, like, a full line is drawn in the sand now, where if they don't commit to this, we know we can get other buyer activity here. We'd like to get this one closed out, but, like, enough is enough. So I just wanted to give you an example of some of the back and forth that we've had with a very high level, a high value deal that we obviously want to exit. It's going to be an excellent return for us. We've been holding it for a while, but we also know, hey, this one is a higher quality property where we don't immediately have a backup buyer, but since we've had this property, we've gotten a written offer every 7 to 10 days that we held it. So we're not too worried that we wouldn't generate additional activity even within this macro. And so this might just come back to the buyers being like, okay, yeah, we pushed these guys as far as possible, and and we're not bluffing this time. Not that we were before. It's just, how do we work through this negotiation? But hey, guys, you guys are being super annoying now. Like, you keep coming back to the table and just asking. Like, that's just not a good way to do business. So you guys are going to lose out on, and maybe this is how they lost out on that previous deal that the lender was working. They just maybe they're just BSing. Who knows? I mean, we know they have the money, but if they're just like super annoying to work with, that might have been how they fell out from the other deal there. So just wanted to share that so you can kind of keep that in mind, where again, you have to weigh like, how much do you need to exit a property? Like the auction property that we had, like we would have been just kept giving, or this other Tennessee property that we have that's going to be a net loser. Like I would basically take any price just to get out of the deal. Like we already know it's a net loser. A mistake for buying it. I would probably cave on pretty much anything that a buyer presented to us, even if we put up like an initial fight initially. But like on this one, okay, there needs to be more back and forth here. So just need to weigh that. Best of luck to you on any current deals that you're working on. Hopefully this is helpful. Looking forward to next time. SeriousLand.capital for any of your funding needs. Again, we want higher value deals. DK Plus is very interesting to us at the moment, though we will still consider some of the lower value ones. And Land Diligence Facebook group, zero cost review of your land deals and land price. Final sprint is on the way. Most reliable land pricing tool on the market. With that in mind, subscribe and share. Take care, everybody. Bye.